Welcome to the HR Data Labs podcast, now part of the Work-Defined Podcast Network. Join us as we explore the vital role of compensation, strategy, data, and people analytics in navigating today's complex business world. With the resources of Work-Defined, we're bringing you deeper insights and actionable ideas from top HR experts. Now, here's your host, David Turetsky.
Hello and welcome to the HR Data Labs podcast. I am your host, David Turetsky, and we have a special episode for you today. I know I say all of them are special, but today is the Season 10 recap edition, and it's the first one I do without my co-host, best friend. And it's a little sad, but it's okay because we're looking forward to progress and an interesting 2026. And so as we record this in 2026, there's a lot of changes to the world that we kind of didn't foresee in the beginning of Season 10. And that's really weird. It's really weird that we've gone through some stuff together as a world that didn't actually happen at the beginning of Season 10. We're going to talk about those a little bit more thoroughly. But I wanted to start out the Season 10 recap by talking a little bit about Season 10. Obviously, we're going to talk about Season 11 and some of the really cool things that we're looking forward to there. We're going to talk a little bit about how things change a little bit for the podcast and for how we interact with you. That's really cool, but I'm going to leave that till later. So why don't we go into the transition and talk a little bit about the world that we're in today for 2026 and look back.
Hi, I'm Carmen Hudson. I'm the host of the Recruiting Book Club, and we're starting our second season. I'm so excited to bring to you another set of guests of recruiters who have written books. We are excited to have some very special guests this season. We've got Shally, we've got Craig Fisher, James Ellis, and quite a few other people that we're going to bring on board to tell us about what they wrote, why they wrote it, and maybe we'll veer off into a conversation about recruiting on all types of topics and subjects that happen in our industry. So I hope you can join us. I'm excited.
So Season 10 was a fascinating season. There was a lot of really cool stuff that happened there. And if you look back the way I have through Season 10, we had a lot of really cool new guests, some of which we met for the first time, some of which we've been talking to many times. In fact, if you know anything about the HR Data Labs podcast, you know that we love having repeat guests come on and see how their opinion changes over time and what topics they want to talk about. And that'll be really fascinating to talk to them in 2026 with Season 11 and see how things go. But obviously, we're going to get into predictions later on, and we're going to talk about the predictions that were made at the end of Season 9. Yes, both mine as well as my co-hosts. But we're also going to make some predictions as well. But as you know, we always go back and look at and do a retrospective of the season that was. And for many of us who paid attention to the podcast during that time, we know that there was a lot that we talked about in terms of the gap that we have in terms of training managers. We talked to a few different people about what we and how we set our managers up for success, how we train our managers in ways in which we may not. We also talk a lot about skill gaps in Season 10. We talked a lot about skill gaps as far as not just what managers have, but also from a succession planning perspective. We talked a lot about artificial intelligence. In fact, we used to play a drinking game where it was kind of how many times was it mentioned, and we had a bingo card as to when was the first time it was going to be mentioned in our episodes. In fact, there were some strange episodes where it didn't happen until very late in the episode, but that was kind of later on in Season 10. But it was a little shocking to me because, as you all feel, I think you do. I think I do. That a lot of it had to do with AI now being a part of every conversation because AI is now part of what we're expecting from the world of human resources, which I've been following John Sumser from HR Examiner a lot, and he's been talking about some of the promise and some of the failings. He's also been talking about what is real agentic. And I highly suggest you read John Sumser and Heather Bussing and their HR Examiner podcast, as well as the articles they put out at hrexaminer.com, because they're both brilliant people and you can learn a lot from reading their stuff. And if you don't see them there, at least go to LinkedIn and look for John Sumser and Heather Bussing, both brilliant on their own, but together when they get their heads together on things, it's just amazing to listen to both of them. But a lot of the other topics that we talked about within season 10 had to do with how do we set our employees up for success in their journey, whether it had to do with the user experience that we're providing them or the career development that we are giving or not giving to them. We also talk a lot about data and the garbage in, garbage out of HR data. As you've been following the HR Data Labs podcast, you know that's something we've been talking about since episode 1 of season 1. And that's actually kind of fun to see that it's still being highlighted. And that's okay because we're human. We make mistakes in data, and that data then goes into the artificial intelligence that we're going to be using to predict things. Yikes. And so I think it's actually kind of interesting to see the emergence of HR data as being a very critical piece of business success. And I hope that doesn't change. I hope it stays because, as we all know, HR data is flawed and it will continue to be because it's about people. People change, things happen, whether it's from benefits enrollment, whether it's having a baby, whether it's a death in the family or whatever. Things change. We're human. We also forget things like, oh my God, I moved and that might change my taxation from one municipality to another, or my percentage I have to have withholding might change. And this is always a good time to bring up, hey, if you haven't checked your W-4 elections in a while, please do. That's hygiene you should do every time you change your batteries for your smoke detectors. Look at your W-4 to make sure that you've updated it and it's appropriate. I also want to touch on some of the individuals who are on the program. I want to reach out and say big thank you to all my guests. There were a couple notables like Rania Nema and Peter Capelli. There was Noah Mithrush, my best friend in the world, Steve Brink, one of my mentors and friends, the best first boss you could ever have. They were really phenomenal conversations. Also, Bob Pulver, we had a really great conversation with him. But I'm not trying to miss people. We had some really fun conversations with a lot of different people. And I can't mention them all. But I just want to give a big shout out to all of you for being on the program. You really help make our program more successful. So thank you very much. But it was always a dream for me to have Peter Capelli on the show. He's a really big name in the world of human resources. And anytime you can have someone who's been that kind of a thought leader, professor, just relative genius on your show, it's really amazing. So that was a goal of mine early on to interview people like Mr. Capelli. And then let's talk a little bit about the future. Let's talk about what season 11 will have. I think season 11 will have a lot of really interesting conversations with a lot of people. If you look at the kind of conversations we had in season 10, and by the way, I forgot one person who I want to really give a big shout out to, Paul Ryman from Novo Insights. He's an amazing person and a brilliant person as well. And he and I have had some really fun conversations about the efficacy of a merit increase in the world of 3% increases. And I think we're going to carry that conversation forward. In fact, I know that he and I are definitely scheduling to have a redo on our podcast where we talked about that. And I did talk about that on his podcast, Total Rewarding Conversations or Total Rewarding Discussions. I forget the name of it now. Sorry, Paul. But anyway, so we're going to have him back on, and we're going to have some other people back on the show as part twos. I don't speak French. But we're going to have them come back on the show and have more fundamentally fun conversations. Also, I should have Mike Curran on the show. He's one of my mentors in the world of compensation. A brilliant person. He's written tons of great books on the Revolutionary War that you should definitely read. But we're going to have lots of people on the show in season 11. I think season 11 will be a kind of coming out party for a lot of really cool, fascinating conversations about where the world of HR is going and how we're going to get there. And I don't want to give any other names away. I just want to say stay tuned for season 11. I think it'll be really cool. I also want to say that when I said that the brown bag lunch will be mixed into season 11, I don't think I'm going to have them as one whole thing. I think I'm going to keep them as separate because the efficacy of having a video podcast is much easier when you have it separate from the audio podcasts. Now, I might publish the video of these podcasts from the HR Data Labs, but I'm going to go back and get permission from each person because initially I told them it was just going to be audio only. And I don't want to shock anybody. Well, I don't have to have my hair look good because I don't have any. A lot of other people feel a little bit more comfortable to wear whatever they want and dress however they want when they are being told that the video is not going to be utilized. So let's transition to the predictions, because the prediction is a really cool part of our show. And because it's just me now, I don't want to make this boring because just me just giving my prediction. So I did something interesting. And I'm going to bring up the artificial intelligence thing again. So instead of me just giving my prediction, I've also asked Perplexity, which I've now been using literally every single day, and it has become an invaluable part of my toolbox for not just home, but work, and doing work for not just my consulting clients, but getting the HR Data Labs consulting practice off the ground. So thank you, Perplexity. I'm really appreciating you. And here's a big shout out to perplexity.ai. But I asked Perplexity, I said, what is your one big prediction for the human resources world and I'll tell you what the prompt is because that matters. What's your one big prediction for the first 6 months of 2026 in the world of human resources, HR technology, people analytics, and AI in HR? Before I tell you, actually, I'm going to go and tell you what they predicted. And I'm going to tell you mine because it would be kind of cheating if I told you mine after I told you what their prediction was or its prediction. I don't really know how to pronoun Perplexity. I'll just say them. So what they said was AI in HR shifts from experimentation to mandatory proof of tangible business outcomes, with CHROs facing intense pressure to deliver measurable ROI on pilots through productivity gains, reduced turnover, and faster talent processes by mid-2026. Now, of course, what did I not do? I didn't tell you what the predictions had been from season 9. So let me tell you what Dwight's prediction was from season 9, and then we'll get into what my prediction was for season 9. And then I'm going to tell you my prediction for the first half of 2026. Why am I doing it this way? Well, first of all, I made a mistake, and I can admit that. But second of all, because I was so excited about the Perplexity prediction. But I wanted to go back and look at what we had said. Dwight's prediction was anticipating a slight loosening of organizations' cautious financial strategies. And my prediction was forecasting a widening gap between organizations embracing AI in HR and those delaying adoption. So let's talk about who's the winner there, or if both of us won. So as far as Dwight's concerned, his was very economically focused on the world in the U.S. most especially. And I'll tell you, I see a little bit of what he said as true. But I don't see it wholesale. I think companies are really rather cautious on opening up the purse strings. Why? Because the world of tariffs have not gone away yet, even though there's been some budging there. There is some instability based on some of the political movements that have been made and some of the military movements that have been made. But also, there's still some inflation. And while the Fed is loosening up their tight grip on interest rates, not sure it's going to change much, but we still haven't seen much happen. And so I'm still cautiously giving that one a B-. I do think he was right, but I don't think he was very right. Why not a C? I always tend to give Dwight the benefit of the doubt. I love Dwight. I would give him more. He'd probably grade himself lower, but I don't. So there you go. And as far as mine, I don't think that's quite happened yet. I think most people are still making the determinations as to whether or not they're utilizing artificial intelligence. But I don't think the gap has necessarily widened between the haves and have-nots yet. I think it's still too soon. And one of the things I'll tell you from what I've heard from the HR technology show, because I did not go this year, was that companies are still talking a lot, HR technology companies are still talking a lot about their capabilities, but we still have not seen the adoption of that yet. In fact, we've heard very clearly that companies are cautiously starting to dip their toes in the water. And so the prediction that Perplexity is making, I'm going to get back to the next 6 months, about, and by the way, so I give myself an A, no, not an A. Actually, I'm going to give myself a D on that one because I don't think it's actually happened. I don't think there's been a widening gap. I think it's starting to happen, but I don't think that's a full credit yet. So it's not passing, really. I don't like a D. It's not failure, but it's not a good one. Now, Dwight would give me a little more. Again, he's a little more forgiving than me. But I choose, since I'm the host now, I choose to give myself a D. Okay. So going back to Perplexity in the next 6 months, Perplexity says that AI in HR shifts from experimentation to mandatory proof of tangible business outcomes, with CHROs facing intense pressure to deliver measurable ROI on pilots through productivity gains, reduced turnover, and faster talent processes by mid-2026. And I think that's a phenomenal guess. I think it's a phenomenal prediction because I think organizations are tired of the BS surrounding the promise of AI because it has not delivered yet. It has not delivered yet. I also, in reading people like Sumser and Bussing and some others on LinkedIn, and I'm a buzz. I love reading that buzz on LinkedIn. I think there's a lot of disappointment in the promise and the delivery. And I really, if I was counseling people and counseling HR and CHROs on investments in artificial intelligence, beyond just HR, I'm talking beyond HR, always, all over the place, I would say, if you're going to put your foot in and dip your toe in, don't do it without making it into a scientific method or utilizing the scientific method. Create a hypothesis, create a test, create measurement about what you're testing, and make it tangible. Make it real. And again, that's not my prediction. I'm just supporting the prediction from Perplexity right now. Because there has got to be a comeuppance here. There's a ton of valuation for many AI companies in the market. And there will be a consolidation of those AI companies in the market. We're starting to see electric bills go through the friggin' roof. And I'm not saying that's specifically because of AI, but AI sucks up a lot of energy, sucks up a lot of water too, unbelievably. And those are commodities, and they're expensive commodities. And what happens when demand is high, supply is the same, prices go up. So, for those of you who are trying to figure out why your oil heating bill, like myself, or my mom, who says my electric bill went up 30%, why? I'm not specifically blaming that on artificial intelligence, but a little bit. So, what's my prediction for the first half of 2026? My first prediction is it's not going to be as breakneck in terms of the changes that we saw from the federal government side as far as the types of legislation, the types of changes in law, regulation, whatnot, between January and June. I don't think we're going to see tons of changes. In fact, I think we're going to see some softening of some of the deregulation we've seen, because I think some of it's gone too far. I also think some states are going to put in place regulations that the federal government used to have in, but they're going to implement their own because the federal government isn't anymore. Things like EPA and worker protections and protections around AI and things like that. So mine's a little bit broad, and Oliver thinks I'm full of crap, but he's putting his 2 cents in. Yeah, tell him, Oliver. But I think that will be a good thing, that the states that want to put in place regulations that the federal government is now loosening up on, they will. And the states that won't. So we're going to start to see a bifurcated world in the world of the United States, where you're going to get lots of regulation in some states, like you already do, like California and New York and New Jersey, but you're going to get to see the others who go the other way. And environmental protection and worker protections are going to fall by the side. I wonder what that does to the environment. I wonder what that does to people's patterns about where they decide to live. I think that'll be fascinating. So we'll see. We'll see what the next 6 months brings. And then in the June-July timeframe, we'll come back and we'll judge Perplexity and myself and see how things go. And on that note, I want to just basically say thank you to all of you, wonderful people on LinkedIn and other places that have wished me well and wished the HR Data Labs consultancy and the HR Data Labs podcast well. This has been a turbulent time. I really appreciate all your support. And if there's anything I can do to help any of you out there, please let me know. Please go to hrdatalabs.com for more information. But I appreciate you all, and I hope you all literally stay safe, please. That's kind of my hope in this world, is that you all stay safe, take care of yourself, and enjoy this precious time that we have on this beautiful earth. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you for listening to the HR Data Labs podcast. Don't forget to hit subscribe and share it with your network. Also, check out the HR Data Labs Brown Bag Lunch every Friday on LinkedIn. You can also check out the recordings on Spotify. Thank you, take care, and stay safe.